In this podcast, we chat about Boro's last-minute winner against Blackpool. We chat transfers with Connolly set to sign for Boro next week. We look ahead to Sheffield United, and of course, we answer your podcast questions. This is the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and this is our matchday chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Connolly coming alive again. Jonny wants the ball played to him. Connolly spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown Podcast with Jonny, Dana and Tom. We are the Boro Podcast that gives you all of the Boro matchday chatter in a podcast. And well, Boro made it 5 wins from 6 thanks to a last-minute winner from Duncan Watmore. The win reduced the gap to 6 points from the top 2, sent 3,000 Boro fans into delirium, and Neil Maddison into Joe Pasquale.
Oh, it's absolutely bedlam! I mean, what a finish to the game that is! Down the right-hand side once more! He squares it! I think it's Duncan Watmore that gets the touch! The voice is gone! The Boro fans are going absolutely ballistic! What a finish to the game!
Hey, I tell you what, it must be forking out to get Joe Pasquale in a commentary, honestly. But now it's all calmed down. Guys. Dana, how are you feeling, if you can get any words out after that performance yesterday?
You know what? I actually have 3 words for this one. And it's just...
Go for your 3 words. We'll go back to the original.
It's just, oh my God. Because that game, firstly, it was enjoyable. But secondly, the way that it ended, I mean, to go from such a high of we're winning, we could see out this victory to typical Boro, we've conceded a late equaliser, and then to the absolute, as you said, delirium of just cloud 9 was unbelievable. And I tell you what, that is why we invest so much time, money and emotion into football, for moments like that. Moments like that make it all worthwhile, and it does show the sign of a good team to be pegged back in that way and then to overcome that. And I tell you what, I love it for every single Boro fan that was in that away end yesterday. It looked absolutely bonkers, and it's games like that that really stick in the memory. We always remember Rhodes against Bolton, we remember Forshaw against Reading and Nugent against Hull, even going back to Emnes against Leeds. We always remember these last minute goals that really stick. They live long in the memory, and that was another one that Boro fans, particularly those that were there, will remember for a long, long time.
Shout out to Project Emnes. But no, absolutely, Dana. Fans were going absolutely mental yesterday. And you're right. It's those moments that make football very, very fun to watch. But Tom, what's going to be your 3 words? Because you said we're going up in the last podcast.
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting 3 words here. I was just going to say absolutely buzzing. But
go for as many as you want, mate. It's Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said, just absolutely buzzing with that. I think I saw something on Twitter earlier. I think it was a Gazette headline where it was saying it's turning kind of dreams into belief. And I definitely feel like that's the case. I think that sums it up perfectly. I think it's games like that where, like as Dana said, the ones that kind of stick in the memory, the last minute winners, but also like the fine margins it comes down to. I think looking back on some of the games from like our promotion season, you know, the goals we were scoring, like Forshaw's last minute one against Reading, even like Nsue against Burnley at the Riverside, like it's just fine margins. Either side could have like hit the post, could have been saved. I feel like that's what it was for like the second goal yesterday. Proper fine margin off Watmore's boot into the back of the net. But I feel like when stuff like that happens, you get the belief that it's kind of meant to be. So yeah, starting to really believe in the team. It was a great game last night. I think I summed it up at one point as being like a basketball game because it was just so end to end, like enjoyable from both teams to watch, and just what a way to win it.
Oh, absolutely. A last minute win is always very sweet. I think your mate Benjamin Button Bloom, Dennis, he was saying something's going on at Middlesbrough. And I genuinely feel like something is now. I think when you win 5 games out of 6 against the teams that we've won against, it does get that belief back into fans. And I think
Yeah.
my three words would be absolutely unbelievable, Jeff. I think we just seem to pull results out when things aren't going our way now. And I think that's kind of the new Middlesbrough we want to see, the new Middlesbrough we want to resonate with. But let's break down the game then, because Middlesbrough made 2 changes to the side that one on Boxing Day, with Bamba and Peltier coming in for Howson and Taylor. Johnny Howson has been confirmed with COVID. So, what's your thoughts on the changes, guys? Do you think they were good moves overall, Tom?
Yeah, definitely. I think McNair really kind of fit into that Howson role quite well. But it did make me think afterwards that might be one of the areas that we're looking to bring in a player in January. Obviously, we do have centre mid options, but none of them could really kind of do that Howson role as effectively as him, or even McNair kind of stepping into it. Taylor, I listened to Wilder's interview after the match, and he was kind of saying, he's not played for so long. It might just be a little bit too much for him to play 3 games in a week. Absolutely, I thought Peltier did a good job when called upon to step in there. I do expect that we'll probably see Taylor back in there on Saturday. On Saturday, I think. I forget what day it is around Christmas time.
It doesn't matter. There's no days anymore.
Yeah, everyone's full of cheese and beer. But yeah, I'd expect to see Taylor back in for Sheffield United. But good moves last night.
Yeah, would you like to see Bamba back in the centre back again at the weekend?
I think it depends. I think Howson's probably still going to be isolating, right? Depend on when he's picked up, but it seems to be within the last week. So yeah, I've got no problem with Bamba playing there for Saturday.
Okay, so then let's talk about the game then, Dana, because how would you assess the game against Blackpool? Because it was something that we haven't seen under Chris Wilder just yet.
Yeah, I agree with Tom that it was an entertaining game. I don't think either side had control of midfield, which is why it was like how it was, and it was end to end. It was entertaining. Boro weren't at their best. It certainly wasn't a repeat of the Forest game or a similar standard of the Bournemouth and Forest game. I think Chris Wilder said that after the match, but it's those types of games yesterday that really show a good team with a good manager. Because if you win in the way that we did yesterday, you have to be serious promotion contenders, because it's the little kind of gritty ones where, as I said earlier at the top, that when you get pegged back, it's your reaction to it. And it seems as though Chris Wilder has already stamped that winning mentality into the team, because previously in previous seasons, even going on maybe this season under Warnock and certainly last season as well, we have been guilty of maybe dropping a little bit and slumping in our shoulders, and we look a little bit defeated once we've been pegged back in that way. And for us to come back from that, and bearing in mind this was a really late sucker punch for Boro, the way that we had that hunger and desire to get back into the game immediately was so impressive. You saw Isaiah Jones going to tackle Dimitri Mitchell. I don't know what he was trying to do, trying to dribble out when his team had literally just scored that equaliser. And not only that, obviously after that he sprints forward, he accelerates forward, and then you see the likes of Crooks and Tav and Watmore busting a gut to get into the box. And that hunger and desire was so admirable and impressive yesterday, that even when we did have that disappointment with the goal, which was disappointing anyway because it was a lack of communication, I think, from Lumley, Dijksteel and Fry, to come back from that the way that we did was so impressive, and it shows that we really need to be taken seriously this season.
Tom, would you agree with Dana's thoughts there, saying like the hunger was probably the difference between the two sides?
Yeah, definitely. Because you look at the way play was going when they scored that. I was a bit worried for the couple of minutes after that it might be Blackpool in the ascendancy, and they're going to be the more likely one to go on to get a winner. But I think the fact that you've still got Jones kind of like chasing down and winning the ball like that in the 92nd minute or whenever it was, it does kind of embody the hunger from the team, and that desire to win. So I agree with what Dan said. It was absolutely great way to win that. I also agree with what you said about the neither team having control of the midfield. Yeah, it did look at times yesterday that we couldn't string two passes together in the midfield and couldn't get out of our own half. That was specifically after we went 1-0 up. Blackpool had a very kind of long spell in possession and obviously did look like doing something. But we battle hard to kind of keep them out, and again, it just goes back to that desire to win.
Well, how do you think Blackpool were able to break Boro down? Because that's probably the first time we've seen a Chris Wilder side be under the caution. We've managed to pull through, of course, and we managed to win the game. But it was the first time we had a bit of problems. But why do you think Blackpool were able to find success whilst other teams couldn't?
I thought they kind of played similarly to us in terms of the pressing, but one thing I did notice in the first half was they were very compact while they were doing it. There was no room for us to work as we normally would. It was definitely up to the midfielders to find space in between the lines and try and turn and get other players involved. There were long periods where we did have possession of the ball, but we were kind of going from side to side looking for an angle to get through. But what was good there is that we were patient with it, whereas under Warnock earlier in the season, it would have been a long ball forward to either one of the wingers. Not that we didn't see that yesterday, but it was done with a purpose and usually found the target, unlike what was happening kind of earlier in the season. I think just kind of being patient paid off for us yesterday, especially the way they were setting up to kind of nullify us.
Yeah, it's always difficult when teams are very compact, and it's probably the reason why Middlesbrough had 47% of when we did have the ball. 47% of it was on that right hand side, and we were trying to cause overloads and trying to stretch teams. Do you think that? Why do you think Chris Wilder opted towards that dinner? What do you think it was because of the compact shape of Blackpool?
It could well be. It was the same against Forest as well, but we have been predominantly right-sided dominant under Chris Wilder because I think the combinations are just so good there. And I kind of spoke to you about the left-hand side and maybe the inclusion of a right footer on the left. The defence could maybe not really do much favours for that left-hand side because different angles, I guess, more comfortable to maybe work on that right foot as opposed to the left. But on the right side, we do have those combinations that just seem really practiced. And you see a lot of our goals this season under Chris Wilder have been scored on that right-hand side where you see Jones will tuck into a half space and there'll be an overload out wide or Dijksteel will overlap, and then it causes problems for teams because they don't know who to mark. It disrupts their shape. And it's that avenue for Boro to get forward and to get in between the lines. And it is such a joy to watch us on that right-hand side because we do seem so effective. I remember the commentator for the Forest game said that he asked Steve Cooper, the Forest manager, basically our biggest threat, and he said Jones straight off the bat. So it shows that side is working. And I think it's always really going to be Boro's right-hand side. I did mention last podcast, I think we are more balanced. I still would like to see more on that left. But the right is absolutely fantastic. The combinations, the work, the link-up play between the strikers, the right-sided centre-half, right wing-back and right-sided central midfielder is just so good.
With that, though, because I appreciate Middlesbrough going to be active in the market in January, do you think that we could potentially maybe see a more attacking left-sided player come in and play on that wing because it would obviously help with balance and of course and take the pressure off Jones. But do you think that's something that could be feasible, or would you like to stick with what we've got in terms of Taylor and have that defensive shape?
I think Taylor's fine and Bowler's fine. I still would quite like to see a little bit more attacking output from Bowler because I think he's capable of it. But it's that left channel for me, and we'll go on to Aaron Connolly later. I think there's a part of his game that would really benefit that left-hand side of Boro's team. So him coming in, there's a definite positive in that. But I am really interested in the left footer on the left because Chris Wilder did say in one of his first press conferences of him wanting left footers on the left and right footers on the right. And I think Fry and McNair have done well when they've played there. But in terms of the build-up from the back, it might not be so much of a of a need, but it would be nice to have a left footer. Just because I think it does create different and more comfortable angles for maybe the wide players, and then for Tav especially as well when he's kind of dropping deep. So yeah, we could well see a left-sided player, but I don't think a left wing back. Obviously, Aaron Connolly coming in, maybe a left-footed centre back.
Okay, well, we'll come on to Aaron Connolly very shortly, but I think if we in an ideal world, I would love us to sign Teo Bongonda from Genk as a left winger. I think he's wonderful. But that is very much a dream signing. But Tom, let's move on to like after the game, because although Middlesbrough won yesterday, Chris Wilder wasn't particularly happy with the performance, but was glad that Middlesbrough found a way to win. Is it refreshing to hear a manager say that and have such high standards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago after one of the games, and it was kind of the same then. But I think it was obvious to everyone that we didn't play as well as we could have done last night. I think when you look at it in comparison to the Forest game, Blackpool really made it a lot harder for us than Forest did, and prevented us from playing the way we would have liked to. But we obviously still found a way to win, and the fact that we've got those standards, it is good to hear. I don't think we've had anyone after Karanka, maybe, who has really kind of had that type of standards where it's like we won, but we weren't at the races and we need to do better. So I think it's just really good when you have managers like that. I think it shows a pedigree, and you'd hope that kind of attitude and mentality rubs off on players as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely it does. And you think it probably has rubbed off with the players. Obviously with the last minute goal, it shows real character, doesn't it, Dana, to get through those difficult moments and find a way to win towards the end. And obviously the scenes, of course, were something special, weren't they?
Yeah, it was. As I said, the hunger and the desire from Jones to close down Dimitri Mitchell. I mean, he obviously smelt the opportunity, and the whole busting a gut to get into the box is so impressive really late on in the game. And Tav and Crooks especially, the amount of energy that they must spend in the game is phenomenal. The fact that they're charging up towards that box to try and get the goal. And I tell you what, when you look sane, because that flicks off Duncan Watmore's toenail, really, doesn't it? I didn't even think that you got a touch on it. And I mean, those celebrations, I must admit, I don't really remember too much from the second half other than the goals, because I stayed awake until 5 o'clock in the morning. I didn't go to sleep until then because I just couldn't process that game.
You cover like that.
Yeah, my mind was like spinning. I was like, Jesus Christ, did that just happen? Because we're so used to Boro letting us down, aren't we? We're so used to just saying, typical Boro, next game might be okay. But when you win like that, it's so sweet. And I just loved it. I loved every minute of that. And I've thought a lot about Boro this week of, am I getting too carried away? Am I getting a little bit too overexcited? But I don't care, really. Upon reflection, I don't care, because I'm not saying that we're going to get promoted. If we get into the top 6, fine. But it's almost irrelevant to me at this point, because I'm just so happy watching us play this way, playing the way that we do. Of course, it helps when you're getting results. But it's moments like that that are just so unparalleled, really. Absolutely unparalleled. And Chris Wilder said it after the game, that it really creates a bond between the fans, the staff, and the players as well. So yeah, it was brilliant.
I think it's a case of the new Middlesbrough, really. I've got a blog post which is going out probably tomorrow around where we were in April in terms of like the rebuild 5.0 and why Middlesbrough were always in rebuild, and where we are a few months later. And it shows like this is probably the new Middlesbrough now, where it's going to be a new structure. It's based on new different beliefs and behaviours. And I think that Middlesbrough have probably turned a corner as a club now, and I think we're in a much better place than where we were a few months ago. And it's very much long-term process driven now, and the key behaviours of what Chris Wilder's bringing to the club is probably resonating with the players is just as much as the fans as well, and they all interlink together. I think it's signs of a very, very good team when you don't play well and you pick up the 3 points, and I think that breeds confidence. And obviously when we're looking at the game in Sheffield United on New Year's Day, Middlesbrough can go to that with so much confidence and have that belief, instill them that they can always get something, even in the darkest moments. And I think that's where we could potentially be, hopefully, coming into the season. I don't think you're being too optimistic, to be honest, Dan. I think when you watch this club now and watch the style of football we're playing and the way we're playing and getting results under Chris Wilder, I think it's very justified, to be honest. There's not many teams at the moment in the league where I'm thinking, I fear you, no. Maybe there's probably Blackburn, who are just absolutely flying at the moment, and they're looking like they can beat anyone. But other than that, you've got your result against Bournemouth, you've drew against Fulham, you've beaten Swansea, you've beaten Nottingham Forest, who are all in around you. You've drew with West Brom under a previous regime as well. So it's all signs there where you can really look up, and January could be a very, very good time for us. But overall, would you say that Middlesbrough were deserving of 3 points at the end? No? Yes? Tom?
Yeah, of course we were.
Yeah.
To be fair, like that could have went either way at the end. When that equaliser went in, like my head went down a little bit watching it. But also, I was kind of like, well, they've had a long spell of dominance in the second half. That was probably deserved. And then when we went up the other end, it was like, no, we definitely deserve that. So, yeah, I think any result by the end of that would have been a fair one, to be honest, just because of how well I think both teams played. But yeah, I'd definitely say we deserve that 3 points.
I agree with that completely. Yeah, I agree. I think there was a period before they scored and it came through on my phone before I saw it in front of me. And I was like, I'm not obviously disappointed, but a draw isn't so bad of a result because, as we've sort of mentioned, they had their chances, we had our chances. There was no control in midfield. It was an end-to-end game. A draw would have probably been it would have been a good result. I think it would have been a fair result. But then I think about how we responded to that setback. And when you play like that, and I know this was only a period of like a minute or so, but when you don't like bow your heads down and feel sorry for yourselves, and when you go try to attack and get that lead back, that's where we deserved it. And we've spoken a little bit earlier about the kind of feeling around the club and something's happening, and it does feel like that. It really, really does feel like that. And that's why I'm so happy with Middlesbrough right now, because it feels so good to feel good about your football club and to have this feeling of something's been created. And I will say we've had a few false dawns under managers where we've maybe thought something's been created, but it just feels different this time. We have, as I mentioned last podcast, probably the best manager in the Championship. I can only think of Marco Silva that is within that conversation. And yeah, there's something in the air, I tell you, because between that Zinkernagel miss against Forest and then Boro scoring the late winner yesterday, it's just footballing gods are shining down on us at the moment.
Absolutely. Football is life, if you watch Ted Lasso. So let's keep the praise coming, because we want to move into the praise and place. Of course, if it's the first time listening to us, we do pick a player out each week, or two or three, and we say why we're going to praise them. Dana, who is your praise and player of the game /week?
I have to go with Isaiah Jones. I have to. I think, yeah, unbelievable again. And it's amazing. And we tweeted about this after the game. It's amazing to think that had Sammy Amiobi been fit, he probably wouldn't be at the club right now. Like, that is crazy to think. And another 2 assists yesterday. I think he's got 3 assists and a goal under Chris Wilder. It might be more than that. And it just feels as though that is only going to increase, that his goal contributions are only they're going to be plentiful really under Chris Wilder. And what's mostly impressive about Isaiah Jones, and what doesn't really seem to be getting mentioned, is that he's playing right wing back, which is not his position. He's a winger. He's an attacking player, a very old school attacking player, in the sense that he's going to take his man on, he's going to go around the outside, and he's playing right wing back. And the balance between his game defensively and offensively is really, really good. And fair play to Martin Carter, who picked him up from Tooting and Mitcham, because he is an absolute gem.
Oh, he really is. I mean, 5 assists for the full season now. Then he's my player in the praise and place as well. I think he's just came through and been a very, very good player to watch. And, when with these players, they come in with no expectation, And fans, when a player comes through like that non-league, there's no like I was saying, obviously there's no expectation on them to do well. If they do well, fantastic. If they don't, then it's like it's not much of a loss really. But he's just came on so much as the season's gone on, and it'd be exciting to see where he goes probably at the end of the season as well in terms of how he performs throughout. But Tom, who's going to be your player of the week?
It's going to be 3 for 3 here. It has to be Jones as well.
Another
Agree.
hat-trick.
Another hattie, 2 hatties in a row.
To be fair, we almost cursed Dijksteel yesterday because many people were blaming him for that equalising goal. So fingers crossed we don't curse Isaiah Jones here.
It can't be Jones then. I thought he was rubbish yesterday. So.
The good old Boro breakdown curse lives on. Do you remember my cursed stat of the week? That's a throwback.
Yeah, but let's not do that. There's a reason why we got rid of that, Dana. There's a reason why I thought you did that.
I know.
But there is another player as well, which I want to talk about. It's Sterling for Blackpool as well. He's on loan from Chelsea at the moment, and if we ever are looking for a right wing back or a right centre back, he's your boy. By the way, he's a very very good player. I thought he gave Payero a terrible time yesterday at times. He made things really difficult, and I think there's players out there. If Jones ever to leave, or we need competition for that, there always is players that could compete at that level. And it'd be interesting to see if we do recall Spence, which I'm starting to think could potentially be unlikely. But let's see what we can do and let's talk about transfers then, because there is a bit of transfer news, and Boro set to complete the signing of Brighton striker Aaron Connolly on a 6-month loan deal. The 21-year-old Irishman is in need of playing time after falling out of favour with Graham Potter. Dana, what can we expect from Aaron Connolly? Because you mentioned it a little bit earlier on, he could potentially fit on that left-hand side.
Yeah, it's difficult to talk about him on the pitch because before you even get there, there's just you're bombarded with incidents off it, which has, by all accounts, maybe not derailed, but it's definitely impacted his game a little bit, and he's lost his way, shall we say. But when we're talking about him on the pitch, I think he's somebody that is going to run the channels. He's going to stretch defences. He's got a knack of occupying that left-hand half space, which could really help Tav, and it could really help Taylor or Bowler or Peltier, whoever's on that left-hand side. Because what we see right now with Middlesbrough is with Sparrow and Watmore and Crooks and Dijksteel, the whole team is just on the left, really. But we've got provided he does actually sign, which by all accounts he will. We will have a player that can float around those left spaces, which will be fantastic for the likes of Tav, as I said. He was once quite highly rated when he first broke through, and thanks to Albion Analytics for giving a little bit of an insight into this. And he could complement Andras Sparrow's movement really well. We know how Andras works in the team, the good old pointing of the finger, wanting to get him behind, wanting to kind of drop. He does drop deep. He drops deep to receive. So he could really work well in tandem with Andras Sparrow, and he's well suited from to pressing from the front. I think his low centre of gravity really helps with this because he can have that sort of change of pace to be able to kind of run down defenders. But he's not particularly clinical, which I think we need in a striker right now. Even with Sparrow scoring 3 and 3, I think we still need a natural goal scorer, shall we say.
So would you say then, Dana and Tom, would you say that Boro are probably in need of an additional striker on top of Connolly coming in then? Oh,
yeah,
go on, Dana, you can
100%.
take it.
Yeah, 100%. And I know we've been linked with Balogun. If we sign Balogun, it will be one hell of a loan signing. But I kind of have the feeling we might not, because there's other teams that are interested in him, isn't there? So massive competition for him. But if we can bring him in alongside Connolly, then that would be fantastic. If it's just Connolly, it would be an interesting move. But I think we need probably more than just him.
Tom, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that we are going for the kind of two players in every position. And you look at our options up front, you got Sparrow and Watmore, who are the likely to be staying. Ikpeazu looks like he's probably going to be off. And then you got Hernandez, who, although he did a job the last couple of games, he's very much shoehorned into that position. It's just like when you got a fast player on FIFA and you shot him up front. So I do think we're after two strikers to kind of compete with Sparrow and Watmore for those positions. Haven't done a I don't even want to call it research because it wasn't even that much in depth. But having looked into Connolly a little bit, because I admit I didn't know too much about him before we were linked with him. He does look like all the things Dan's just said there. He does look like he's going to fit into the kind of pressing system. And he looked kind of handy with shooting, like he knew where the goal is. But obviously that's YouTube. It made Lee Dongu look like a world beater, so I'll reserve judgment on that. But it could potentially fit into the system, and then we'll be looking for one more alongside him, I reckon.
It's interesting because we got a question from Lou, and he did say, is Aaron Connolly the exact opposite of profile in what type of striker you need? So I'm assuming from both of your opinions there, you just think that we need probably one more striker to get us over the line. Is that what you're trying to say to me?
Yeah, I get what Luke's saying because we've had a conversation about this. If we need a clinical kind of poacher, I guess, somebody that you're going to hang your hat on to finish their dinner. And as good as Sparrow is at his link-up play, he misses a lot of chances that he probably should do better with. And this has been a problem of his game probably since, well, I think the last time that he was clinical was probably when he played for Slovan Bratislava. And then when he moved to Portugal, it kind of, his finishing got a little bit interesting, should we say that? So, and then Watmore as well. I mean, Watmore is weird because he can score goals like the one against Huddersfield, the one against Sheffield United, and yet he misses the Stoke chance. It's absolutely mad. But yeah, we need a clinical striker. So someone like a Balogun alongside Connolly, and I'll be content with that.
Okay, so let's move to the other end of the pitch then, and let's move it again internally because Middlesbrough have recalled Sol Bryn back from his loan for Queen of the South. Do you think he's returning to compete for that first choice shirt, Tom? Do you think it's something that we could be looking towards?
I don't think so, but I think like he would get the chance if it came up. I read an article earlier which I thought made a very good point where we've got the 3 goalkeepers at the moment who are registered players, but Bryn wouldn't count as one of them because he's under 21. So it's potentially we're going to ship out one of those goalkeepers and use that space for elsewhere on the pitch and have him kind of in and around the squad as third choice keeper. And like I say, if that opportunity did come up, I'm sure he would have got it. I feel like that's probably the direction we're going to go, and we're going to use that space for elsewhere on the pitch.
Do you think it restricts his development then, Dana, if we're going to do that?
It depends how many opportunities he gets, to be honest, because he's vying for a starting berth at his hometown club. I mean, that is fantastic motivation to up your game in training. And I know you can't really replicate what you do on the pitch in training and vice versa, whatever, but I think it's a big opportunity for him. The goalkeeping situation is definitely not set in stone. We've seen Lumley this season. We've seen Luke Daniels. To be honest, I'm surprised we haven't seen Stojanovic, just given the uncertainty over who is really that number one. So it is a massive opportunity for Sol Bryn. And by all accounts, he's been fantastic at Queen of the South. So it much depends on how much game time he gets. I know we've got the Mansfield FA Cup tie where he could really stake his claim. So all the best to him. I think it's fantastic that we brought him back. He's obviously been really good at the Dune Hammers, which is the best club nickname I think I've ever heard. And hopefully he can, hopefully he can become our number one. That would be really, really good to see a local lad become a number one.
So with that in mind, then, do you reckon it's Stojanovic and maybe would you see a Daniels or Lumley leave, Tom?
I think Stojanovic is pretty much nailed on. And this isn't kind of like in the know or anything. It's just the fact that he hasn't even featured under Wilder, and it just doesn't ever seem like getting that opportunity to come back. So I feel like his days are numbered at Boro, and he'll probably be off. I don't think that Daniels will be off as well. I think he'll still be there as kind of the second choice and kind of battling with Sol Bryn for the shirt should anything happen to Lumley at the moment. But I can't see 2 keepers going. I can definitely see Stojanovic going though.
Okay, so let's move on then. Let's move to a new year, new Middlesbrough. On New Year's Day, Middlesbrough travel to Bramall Lane to play the high flying Sheffield United again for under Paul Heckingbottom. But let's break them down, guys, because we haven't got a Sheffield United response this week, but we'll break them down ourselves. Tom, do you want to do a bit of form on Sheffield United, because since they've got a new manager, they've had a bit of a bounce, haven't they?
Yeah, Paul Heckingbottom, former Leeds manager, somehow getting these results out of them. Didn't expect that when he got hired, but yeah, they won 4 out of the last 5. The only exception there being a 0-0 draw against Coventry on the 20th of November. But then after that, they beat Reading 1-0 away, Bristol City 2-0 at home, Cardiff 3-2 away in what looked like a great game there, and they even had a result against Fulham last week, and they've been off since the 20th of December, so they're going to probably be a little bit fresher than us who've played all our scheduled fixtures, so should be a good one on New Year's Day.
With that, obviously them not playing from the 20th of December, that could have a help or hindrance, couldn't it? Because as you've seen against Manchester United, against Newcastle, Man U can put 1 or 2 passes together. Chelsea have struggled when they've had that break as well. So do you think that could be a thing we could potentially look at?
Yeah, I was thinking that when Tom mentioned it. Obviously, you said there that it could give them fresh legs, but it could hinder them as well, because we have had the matches in quick succession, so we'll be full of beans, if you like, and we'll be in the momentum, into the swing of things, and they will have a broken schedule. And this is a really interesting period in the Championship, actually, because we've had so many postponements that Boro have somehow managed to avoid. Again, Boro's luck is in at the moment, and other teams will have either a fixture pile up or really a lack of consistency. QPR as well didn't have a game for, I think, 22 days or something like that, and it'll be problematic for teams. So it could well be problematic for Sheffield United as well, and hopefully it is for the benefit of Boro.
Okay, so let's move to the team then, because we've got a question from Jack, and he said, would you keep the same team against Sheffield United? We felt we looked more disjointed, especially in midfield. So, Tom, you said at the start of the show that you'd probably bring Taylor back in. So maybe just the one change you'd go for.
Yeah, potentially Watmore in for Hernandez as well. But yeah, I don't see the point in kind of making major changes there. I feel like Howson's still going to be an enforced change, and McNair's the best person to fill in that position. Taylor, I think it would be a lot more balanced if he was on the left-hand side than having Peltier there, despite Peltier did a good job yesterday. I do think in the limited time we've seen him, Taylor does a good job getting forward on that left-hand side as well, so I'd like to see that. But yeah, other than that, maybe only Watmore in for Hernandez, just for the fact that he scored and probably has a bit of confidence to take from that as well.
So 2 changes for you, Tom. Dana, would you make any more from that, or were you happy with the 2?
I'd be happy with the 2 there. Yeah, I think obviously it depends on Howson. Chris Wilder didn't actually mention COVID after the game, although I think it was on BBC T's pre-match that it was COVID. I think Chris Wilder just said he was unavailable, so it was quite interesting his choice of words there. But yeah, I don't know what the kind of isolation period is now, to be honest. So hopefully we can see him back soon, because I think he's been outstanding under Chris Wilder. But I would probably only make two changes. I definitely agree with Watmore in for Hernandez, and it's either or really with Peltier and Taylor. I think both similar players in that they've done solid jobs in that position.
Okay, so what's your predictions then going on New Year's Day? Apart from you being hungover, of course, what's going to be your score predictions? Oh well, both of you probably, yeah. I know, Tom's on the tinnies already, isn't he?
I've been on the Disaronno, but I've already drank it.
See, there's me, the sore one, because I have to guide the ship.
What are you going to go? Getting excited.
I can't. As soon as we stop, I'm going to open a bevy as well.
And on the piss for Chris. So
on the piss for Chris.
Oh yeah, on the piss for Chris with my empty glass. Actually, I've got a drink here, but it's not alcoholic. So on the piss for Chris.
On the piss.
Shout out to Ian Smith for that. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, well, don't worry. Ian's gonna be getting another shout out in about 30 seconds. So
He doesn't need any more.
he doesn't need any more. But finally, predictions. What he's gonna go for? Are you thinking Middlesbrough win on New Year's Day, Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to go 1-0 win.
He loves a win, doesn't he? At the moment, you Tom, you're so optimistic. Tom is back.
Optimistic, let's say.
Oh no.
I can just see it being kind of a very difficult game and it just coming down to one goal, and I think we'll get that.
Okay, 1-0 for Tom. Dana, what are you going to go for?
I'm scared of this one because it's January. Oof, I think it's going to be tight again. You know what? I'm going to repeat the score from the Blackpool game, which I actually got right. 2-1 Boro.
2-1 Boro. I'm going to go with 1-1. I think it's going to be a 1-1. I think it's going to be a tough game. Fatigue might fit in, hit us. And of course, there might be a bit fresher, but obviously it can work both ways, couldn't it? But I'm going to go with 1-1, I think. Yeah.
Chris Wilder's returned to Bramall Lane as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Narrative.
Well,
Interesting narrative.
it'd be beautiful. You know, we were saying on the previous podcast where we could shit out. We were waiting for a team to like blow away, and we could shit ourselves to a 5-0 win and just ruin everyone's day. That would be ideal, wouldn't it? But let's move on to questions then, because you send in the questions on Twitter and we answer them on the podcast. And another shout out for Ian Smith. He says, "Do we need major surgery in January or just the odd tweak here and there? I'd be loath to see too many changes given what Wilder is getting from the squad we have currently. Dana, major surgery or just the odd tweak?"
Just the odd tweak. I think adding meat to the bones, as I mentioned last pod. Excuse me. Obviously, there's going to be outgoings. Chris Wilder has said that himself, that there's a few close outgoings. But I don't think we need to really majorly disrupt the team. I think it's good, the blend that we've got at the moment. As I said, it's just adding that little bit of extra quality.
Okay. So next question is from Jake, and he says, "Is there any worry that we could see a similar pattern to last season where we went into January in good form and then made a bunch of signings that appeared very good on face value, but then end up getting worse results by the end of the year?" Now, Middlesbrough are renowned to have New Year dip, isn't it? Like a New Year dip. We always have that New Year dip. It's been happening for many, many years. But Tom, do you think we'll see the same this year?
I think it's always a concern, just because, like you say, it's what we're known for. Really, if it's not January, it's December, and we've had a good December. So, I don't know. I think, like Dana said earlier, it feels different now with Wilder. I trust that we won't, and I hope that we won't. But touch wood, we won't. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. But I have faith this time.
Okay. Next question is from Katie, and she says, "Who are the players that move on in January?" Wilder said recently that some players will leave, and I'm not sure who it will be. Now, given that we think Stojanovic is absolutely nailed on, is there going to be any surprises, Dana? Who do you think is going to potentially leave in January?
Surprises. Can you class Saliki as a surprise? I don't know whether you can really class him as a surprise, to be honest.
Like
it's a
the
difficult
worst
one.
kept secret, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a difficult one with him, isn't it? Because there's an obligation to buy, but he's not getting on the pitch, and I can't even remember the last time we saw him on the pitch, if I'm being honest. So he could leave. We've mentioned Hall before. I think he could potentially leave. In fact, I think he probably will at some point, be it January or the summer. Ikpeazu's been linked with Millwall. I think he's obviously been made available for transfer, as per a report that came out maybe a month ago now. And then Coburn on loan potentially. You've got Marcus Brown coming back, who could be loaned out. You know what? I really want to know what we're going to do with Sammy Amiobi, because we don't play with wingers anymore, do we? And I can't see him playing wing back when he eventually does come back, whenever that will be. But that's one for much later on, I guess.
Yeah, I think everyone that you've mentioned there on like Hall, Payero, obviously we could take Leah Saliki. I think like they are kind of like the names that you'd expect to probably move on or we've been open as a club to get rid of them. I'm with you, Dan. I can't really see many surprises, to be honest, apart from those names. Then again, we end up selling Tav, Crooks, and Payero, and just go out. You know what? We're selling everyone. We're just going to play the kids for the rest of the season. It'd be very Boro-like, wouldn't it? But the next question, it's from Stuart and Dan, and he said, and they both said, "What's your thoughts on the Payero situation?" And Stuart went on to say, "Rarely getting minutes at the moment. Could have been a chance to play him against Blackpool with Howson being injured. Hard to see us changing the midfield three when we all fit at the moment, considering we are getting wins. Can only assume he will want to be playing." It's a bit of a strange one, isn't it, the Payero situation, Tom? Because, you know, he came in for a couple of million at the start of the season. It's been stop-start from due to injuries. Hasn't really featured much under Chris Wilder. It's a bit of a strange one, isn't it?
Yeah, and I can imagine he probably will want to be playing, but I think it was summed up well there with the question. You can't see us changing the midfield three when all are fit at the moment and we are winning. You know, obviously it was an opportunity for him to play yesterday with Howson being gone, but I also don't think he'd have played that Howson role as effectively as Howson does. I think in terms of kind of a depth chart for our midfield at the moment, Lias Leakey's kind of deputy behind Tav, just from being that left footer on the left side, and Payero's behind Crooks, and you can't drop either one of those. So I'm sure it probably will happen for him. It's just he's got to be patient and kind of wait for, I don't know, Crooks to be out of the team for whatever reason.
It is interesting he's not getting a chance. Sorry, it's interesting he's not getting a chance off the bench, because there's been a few games where I'm thinking Crooks and Tav have played so well and so hard, like they've obviously worked so hard, that fresh legs might be welcomed off the bench. And I know he came on, but it was only really for what felt like 2 seconds in a recent game. But
it was Forest that.
Yeah, the last game, the last game before the one that we've
Cheers,
talked
Jeff.
about. God, I don't know what time it is. But yeah, it's been interesting. He's not really gotten too much of an opportunity off the bench. But I agree with what Tom said there. I think it was difficult for Payero yesterday, because out of all the midfielders that you'd probably want to be unavailable in order to put Payero into the team, it was Howson that is definitely not the player that you're going to bring Payero into the team for.
Actually, I just had a note about the Forest game as well. And don't know if you guys kind of picked up on this, even though it was 2 minutes and it might be something not to read too much into. We did change shape when he came on, and he was kind of the right attacking mid, and Tav went to the left attacking mid position. So I mean, the only reason I kind of picked up on it was because everyone seemed to know where to go when that happened. So I don't know if that was like a different shape that we've worked on in case of any other situations or something, but it did seem interesting at the end of that game, the change of shape and the fact that it happened so quickly because everyone knew where they had to be for it.
Yeah, it comes back to good management and getting your point across, doesn't it? That's exactly what it is. I think it's interesting, the PR one, because I thought he would come in against Blackpool. I thought we might see Crooks maybe move into that defensive midfield role. Even a Dykesdale, obviously McNair can play there as well. But I thought Crooks would move defensively. We'd maybe bring Payero in, and we'd hopefully see Tav and Payero in as those attacking midfielders. But it wasn't to be. I think that could be something we look at, especially if Howson's out for a couple of weeks now with COVID. So we'll see on that one. I can't see us overly relying on Bamber in centre back, even though he did very, very well, and he's reliant and to have him in. But I would prefer to see McNair central and centre back, and then have Crooks defensively and Payero in. That's just my personal preference. But it's interesting. I can't see him leaving the club at all, but I think you never know Middlesbrough these days. Last question, it's from Dan. He says, would missing out on the playoffs this season be a disaster? Bearing in mind the current building up feel good factor at the Riverside. So if Middlesbrough missed out on the playoffs, Tom, is it the end of the world?
Oh no, because we'll win it all next season. It's fine. I feel like next season, with the feel-good factor at the moment, it would be one to remember. And I feel like it's already getting to that point with like the connection between the players and the fans. I think you saw that yesterday after the Blackpool game. And I get the feeling now that COVID permitting, we're going to see a lot more kind of away sellouts and massive allocations being taken. And it's got that kind of feel about it from the last time we had that kind of feel good factor. So I don't think it would be the end of the world. I think we'd have a full season of that, and it would be great. It'd be one to remember. But I also think it'd be great if we got to the playoffs and hopefully put an end to the Wembley curse.
There's only one man that can do it. It's Chris Wilder. Dana, what's your thoughts on it? Is it a disaster?
No, it's not a disaster. Of course, it'll be disappointing because we are riding the crest of a wave at the moment, and we are so happy. I've been watching too many football highlights, clearly, and it just seems as though the perfect ending, of course, would be to see Boro in the top 6 come May, but it wouldn't be a disaster. I think I agree with Tom of seeing a full season of Wilder ball in the Championship is really not that bad. That is a really nice prospect there. So I'm somebody that really likes to see it from start to finish, really. And I would like to see it from start to finish. So it wouldn't be a disaster, no.
And you can get Quest for 99p a month with Dana 99. That's Dana 99 for Quest for 99p a month. But with that, I was going to say for Middlesbrough, the way that we've restructured the club this year, I think I don't think we'll see the fruit of this for another 2 or 3 years, to be honest. And I think Middlesbrough will probably, and hopefully, if we don't get promoted this year, next season would probably be a given. But I think given the way we've restructured now off the pitch and where it's being portrayed on it, I think you've got a couple of years there just to really see the fruit of it and watch us really blossom in a much more like a sustainable new Middlesbrough future, really. So I don't think it's a disaster. I think if anything, we just build on something. We just keep building and building and building until it's really solid. But even if we went up, it'd be amazing anyway just to go up and have that Wembley curse beaten. Or we could have hit the top 2, 26 points away. Who knows? It's the Championship. It's the Championship. Anything can happen. But that's it, guys. Thank you very much for joining me as always. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for listening. And Boro have been absolutely electric with a Slovenian man on song. Because I'll be you and you'll be me. There's lots and lots for us to see. There's lots and lots for us to do. He's Slovenian. Can I be Slovenian too? This is the Boro Breakdown Podcast, and that was our Matchday Chatter in a pod.